Have you ever noticed how sometimes we experience involuntary blindness? I think that's the best way to word this, isn't it? Ladies, I'm sure that you have to deal with this with your significant other quite often. We have this involuntary blindness. And what I mean by involuntary blindness, am I the only one that can overlook something that's right in front of my face? You send me on a baseball field and I can point out every little minor detail, but if you send me to the refrigerator to find the milk, I can't see it. It's right there, and I can't see it. Have y'all ever lost your keys and couldn't find them forever? Anybody? And then when you found them, why do we always say it was at the last place I looked? Obviously, because if you kept looking after you found them, then what is wrong with you? I have a picture on my phone that I saved. My mama is a mighty sweet woman. I have a picture of my mom on my phone with a pair of reading glasses on her forehead, a pair on the tip of her nose, and she was frantically searching for her pair of glasses. It was absolutely adorable. I love it. Have you ever, you couldn't find your cell phone? You can't find the pepper? There's things right in front of us, and we can't see it. Sometimes, I'll be honest, I'll confess, sometimes our blindness is simply a lack of paying attention. I'll blame diabetes. I'll blame ADHD, or I think I have a touch of the tism. Whatever it is, we all have our little things that we fall for. All of us have our little idiosyncrasies. Whatever it is, we can blame that. And other times, it's an on-purpose ignorance of ignoring. For example, how many of you have ever gone somewhere and seen the sign in the yard, keep off the grass? Did you keep off the grass? No, you didn't. When I was in college, Philip Alligood was the groundskeeper. He came in the cafeteria. Granted, I went to a small Bible college. He came in the cafeteria one day and laid into us, if any of y'all get on the grass, or if any of y'all throw fruit and apple cores and orange peelings on the grass, I'm going to take all the fruit out of here, and I'm going to barricade it where you can't walk on the grass. My father-in-law worked for the college, and John is good friends with Mr. Alligood. And as we're leaving the cafeteria, John has in his hand a handful of grapes. And he would take a bite, and he'd throw one. And he'd take a bite, and he'd throw one. Mr. Alligood came down the sidewalk. He says, hey, how you doing, Philip? You want any grapes? And Philip just looked at him, shook his head, and walked off. It was the greatest moment of my time. I was like, you're a brave, brave man. We were scared of Mr. Alligood. He wasn't. What about no swimming? Have you ever seen any signs of no swimming, but you went swimming anyway? Or in your younger days, maybe swimming with less material on? Anybody? No one else? All right. A sign that you all ignore, speed limits. It's a suggestion, right? Just like it's a stoptional, right? They're suggestions. You know, sometimes the signs are right in front of us. They're clear as day, and we still ignore them. In today's section of the Gospel of Mark, we're going to check out today. Mark directs our attention to people all around Jesus who are struggling with spiritual blindness. It's as if he's saying, guys, just read the dang signs. The signs are right here. Just read them. Sadly, those who were experiencing blindness towards Jesus weren't just in the crowds, and they weren't just the Pharisees that we keep talking about, those traditional church folk. It was also even with his own followers, his apostles as well. So as we work through today's message, I want us to check out 4 signs that should help everyone understand who Jesus really is. My prayer is that as we check out these signs, we're going to see Jesus more clearly, and that any spiritual blindness that we might have can be corrected. Sign number 1 is found in the first 10 verses, and this is the sign of bread. Jesus is known as the what of life? The bread of life. We're going to look at the first 9. We'll come back to verse 10 later on, but check out the first 9 verses right here with me of Mark chapter 8. Y'all ready? In those days, there was again a large crowd, and they had nothing to eat. He called to the disciples and said to them, I have compassion on the crowd because they've already stayed with me 3 days and have nothing to eat. If I send them home hungry, they will collapse on the way, and some of them have come a long distance. His disciples answered him, where can anyone get enough bread here in a desolate place to feed these people? How many loaves do you have? He asked them. 7, they said. He commanded the crowd to sit down on the ground. Taking the 7 loaves, he gave thanks, broke them, gave to the disciples to set before the people. So they served them to the crowd. They also had a few small fish. And after he had blessed them, he said these were to be served as well. They ate and were satisfied. Then they collected 7 large baskets of leftover pieces. About 4,000 were there. He dismissed them. Have we seen this story before? Does it seem like we just saw this story a week or 3 ago? There's a lot of similarities between the account right here of feeding of the 4,000 and the one we saw 3 weeks ago in Mark chapter 6 of the feeding of the 5,000. But it's important that we notice the differences to prove this is 2 totally different stories, 2 totally different occasions going on. On the first occasion, Jesus fed 5,000 men plus the women and children. So we know in total it was probably closer to 10 to 20,000 people. But on this occasion, it's very specific. It says 4,000 people. First time was 5,000 men, not counting women and children. This time it says 4,000 people. The feeding of the 5,000 took place in Jewish territory, but the feeding right here of the 4,000 is in Gentile, non-Christian, non-Jewish territory. The feeding of the 5,000, they used 5 loaves of bread, 2 fish, but the feeding of the 4,000, we have 7 loaves and a few fish. In the feeding of the 5,000, 12 baskets full of leftovers were collected, but here, in the feeding of the 4,000, only 7 baskets full of leftovers. There's also a difference in the word that's used in baskets in between the 2 accounts. In the first account from Mark chapter 6, the word that's used for the basket is pretty much like a day pack, a picnic basket type thing, a small thing that will last you for that day only, and they were able to collect 12 of those. In this account right here, the word that's used for basket is really more like a laundry basket, a large basket that would have been used for gathering grain during the harvest times. This is like a big hamper that Paul is using here. Mark is writing for us here. This is also referring to the same type of basket from Acts chapter 9, as well as Acts chapter 9, as well as 2 Corinthians chapter 11, where Paul is lowered in a basket. So this is a large enough thing that could hold a human man. Why do I point out these differences? Because some skeptics try to deny that these are 2 separate feedings of thousands of people. But there can really be no doubt that these are 2 totally separate feedings, 2 totally different locations, to 2 totally different, completely different audiences. Also, Jesus himself pointed out there were 2 different feedings, as we're going to see later on when we get in verses 18 through 21. So why does Jesus repeat the same type of miracle, right? Well, that's a question that you could ask for all of Jesus' miracles. How many different times did Jesus heal a demon-possessed person? Several. What about a blind person or a sick person? What about how many times did Jesus bring a dead person back to life? If Jesus did one kind of miracle, that should most certainly be all that's needed, right? Wrong. Keep in mind, Jesus was often performing miracles in the context of the human need, and he was prompted by his compassion. So that's the reason for repeating the same type of miracles over and over again. As followers of Jesus, our goal should be to walk in his steps and look like our teacher. We should be trying to express the same kind of compassion that Jesus expressed to those that are hurting and in need around us. Although none of us possess miraculous powers for healings and things like that Jesus had, there's still so much that we can do to try to relieve the sufferings of others if we put our heart in it and try our best to find a way to help. We also need to keep in mind that Jesus repeated miracles because he was trying to show to a variety of people in different regions, in different parts of the country, and from other countries even. Remember, there's no CNN, there's no Fox News, there's no Facebook, there's no X, there's no TikTok, there's no YouTube to show these videos or send someone a link the whole time. They weren't able to send links on their cell phones back then. Mark was intent on showing that Jesus was not just the Messiah to the Jews. Mark's focus was to show that he was for all people, everywhere, even the Gentiles. So Mark highlighted both the Jewish healings, the Jewish miracles, as well as those that were for the Gentiles. One of the main things that we learn from comparing these 2 different feedings is that the apostles, they still have room to grow, kind of like tech football, right? There's plenty of room to grow. They're not where they need to be just yet. The apostles may have had some progress from the first feeding to the second feeding, but they are still a long way from where they need to be. At the first feeding, we see the disciples suggest strongly that Jesus just send the people away that they're hungry. These folks are hungry. They've been here for a long while. Just send them away. Here at the second feeding, do you remember just then how many days they've been listening to Jesus? 3. For 3 days. Now, I don't know about you. I don't know if you carry a pocket juice or a pack of nabs with you wherever you go, but these folks begin hungry. 3 days they've been listening. So Jesus is right. He said, man, if I send them away right now, they're going to collapse. There is no way. I don't know about y'all. I get hangry if I miss lunch or second lunch. Or I'll go full Lord of the Rings here if I miss my 11sies. All these things. We got to have our snacks throughout the day, right? You got to have these things. So here, the second feedings, the disciples didn't even urge Jesus to send them away. So maybe they're developing a little bit of compassion and they're starting to get the why of the feedings. But it's obvious and clear that they don't understand and they're still struggling with the how of feeding people, which is also an indication not only are they not getting the how to feed these people, they're still struggling with the who. Who's going to do this? Who's going to feed them? They don't even get the who of Jesus. They're still not completely getting who Jesus was and therefore what Jesus can do. The disciples question, where can anyone get enough bread here in this desolate place to feed these people? It made sense and was understandable at the first feeding. Remember at the feeding of the 5,000 men plus all the women and children? They said, where are we going to get enough for this? At that first feeding, that makes sense. But why are you asking the exact same question here? You've already seen what the man can do. How could they have forgotten that Jesus has already fed way more people than the 4,000 that's here? He fed 5,000 men plus the women and children, being probably 3 times at least the number of folks that are here. Were they that slow to understand, or was their faith that small? The question, who can provide for this crowd, should have been easy to answer, right? It should have been, hey, Jesus, you remember what you did a few weeks ago with that other large crowd? Can you do that again? It should have been easy for him, right? Jesus can do this. Time out. Pump your brakes, you judgmental people. Can I remind you of some things? We can't be but so hard on them for questioning and wondering, man, they saw him do the first one. They should have known this. How many times has Jesus provided for you in the past, and yet you still have trust issues? How many times has Jesus seen you through something that you weren't afraid that you were going to make it? And here you are today, you did, and yet you still question him. You know, it's easy for us to judge others, and it's easy for us to be so vindictive and so, I can't believe, how dare they? They're church folk. These folks were followers of Jesus, and they questioned. So who do you think you are? We can be just as slow and just as forgetful, can't we? The story of Mark tells about the feeding is short and to the point. Jesus, again, miraculously feeds this huge crowd. Everyone, I love that it says everyone is satisfied. Not everyone got something to eat. It says everyone was satisfied. I don't know about y'all, but I got a pretty big pit to fill. If I get satisfied, you done something, son. I'm going to tell you that right now. So it doesn't say they ate. It doesn't say they ate a little. It doesn't say they got a little snack. They satisfied their cravings. No, it says they ate and were satisfied. And there were leftovers for everyone to get together. Most miraculous feedings ended with Jesus dismissing the crowd and then getting in the boat for another journey. Look at verse 10. And he immediately got into the boat with his disciples and went to the district of Dalmanutha. Now, there's no ancient sources that identify this plague called Dalmanutha. In Matthew's account, the area is described as the region of Magadan. Everybody says it differently. I struggle. Scholars include that Magadan must have been connected with Magdala, which is a place near Tiberias on the west shore of the Sea of Galilee. Commentators are in general agreement that Dalmanutha was either another name for Magdala or else another location, another village near that area. Magdala is possibly the hometown of Mary Magdalene, one of Jesus' followers. Whenever Jesus returned to the land of Israel, we can expect that the Jewish religious leaders will show up and carry out their agenda, and Mark reports that's exactly what happens in the next few verses as we check out the sign from heaven. Look at verses 11 and 12 with me as we discover the sign from heaven. in verses 11 and 12, it says, the Pharisees came and began to argue with him. They're always doing that. Demanding of him a sign from heaven to test him. Sighing deeply in his spirit, he said, why does this generation demand a sign? Truly I tell you, no sign will be given to this generation. Do y'all remember back a few months ago in Mark chapter 3, how the Jewish religious leaders tried to attribute all the good stuff that Jesus was doing in Mark chapter 3, verse 22? They were trying to attribute it to Beelzebul, the prince of the demons. Now these cats are back with another attempt to expose Jesus as a fraud by asking for a sign from heaven to test him. They wanted a sign that only God could give, like one shown to the Israelites when God sent them manna from heaven in Exodus chapter 16, or when fire came down from heaven to the altar during Elijah's contest with the prophets of Baal in 1 Kings 18, or the separation of the Red Sea or the Jordan River when the Israelites crossed over on dry ground in Exodus 14 or Joshua 3. I love how Jesus truly shows that he's a parent and a teacher right here. Y'all ready for this? What is the first thing, when they start doing all this, what is the first thing Jesus does? Do y'all picture him just scratching his forehead a little bit? You know, parents, y'all get this. Teachers, you definitely get this. That student, that child of yours just, Jesus, take the wheel. Or in his case, I need to take the wheel. He's scratching his forehead. He sees what's going on. He is just so frustrated. The deep sigh indicates a deep regret and exasperation that the Pharisees would still ask for a sign after all that he's done, after all the miracles they've witnessed. They're still asking for a sign. It was a sigh of grief and frustration at the stubbornness and the blindness of these religious leaders, these church folks who should know the truth. Their willful blindness simply broke Jesus' heart. He recognized that their request wasn't because they were interested, it was because they were trying to test him or tempt him, that he had been resisting their allegiance, and he was refusing to give them a sign. When Jesus was tested by the devil in the wilderness, Satan constantly asked him for proofs, and Jesus wouldn't do it. I love that. There's no need to show evil the good. There's no need to prove to evil who you are. You simply shine for God, period. The Pharisees' demand for a sign is parallel today to those who are always seeking miracles for themselves to prove that God is real and that God exists. Just to be real and blunt, all right? The desire for signs to be seen or heard about anything, it ain't nothing but a lack of faith, and in the end, physical proofs remove the necessity for faith, which is required for salvation. Some folks wouldn't become a follower of Jesus no matter what. Certain people in your life couldn't care less about being a follower of God or a believer in Jesus if they saw the dead raised right before their eyes. In John chapter 4, verse 48, Jesus rebuked those who would only believe after seeing signs. True faith and belief is simply found in hearing the word preached and feeling the Spirit move inside of you, convicting your hearts and breaking us before God. The days of sensational signs has passed, and yet God is still in the business of revealing himself to us through the Word of God, through God's people, and through the universe that God created all around us. God's miracles and mercies are new every morning, and we can see them in the rising of the sun, the changing of the seasons, the crops in the field, the display of true love among God's people. The gospel of Jesus and the salvation that comes through him is truly a miracle and a sign that is found to all who desire to accept this life-changing way. We must make sure that we have our eyes and our hearts open to faith. Knowing that the Pharisees wouldn't address their blindness and their unbelief, Jesus left them on their own self-righteous decision-making. Sadly, these Pharisees were blind men, blind gods, and were leading their followers to hell, as you can check out in Matthew chapter 23, verse 15, 17, 19, and 24. So Jesus sought to warn his disciples about them. Let's check out the next sign, the sign of leaven. This is found in verses 13 through 21. The third sign is the sign of leaven. Check it out. Mark writes, "Then he left them, got back into the boat, and went to the other side. The disciples had forgotten to take bread and only had one loaf with them in the boat. Then he gave them strict orders. Watch out! Beware of the leaven of the Pharisees and the leaven of Herod. They were discussing among themselves that they didn't have any bread. Aware of this, he said to them, why are you discussing the fact you have no bread? Don't you understand or comprehend? Do you have hardened hearts? Do you have eyes and not see? Do you have ears and not hear? And do you not remember? When I broke the 5 loaves for the 5,000, how many baskets full of leftovers did we collect? 12, they told him. When I broke the 7 loaves for the 4,000, how many baskets full of pieces did you collect? 7, they said. And he said to them, do you understand yet? The abrupt ending of the conversation with the Pharisees and the speed of the exit had different effects on Jesus and his disciples. Jesus lapsed into a reflective thought about spiritual meaning of confrontation. The disciples were focused on their physical necessities, like how much bread they had or didn't have. With the thought of the terrible spiritual blindness of the Pharisees on his mind, Jesus declared, watch out! Beware! Don't pay attention to the bad stuff. Pay attention to the good stuff. Watch out, beware of the leaven of the Pharisees, the leaven of Herod. The Bible uses this word leaven as a symbol for evil and sin, a false doctrine. Like leaven, false doctrine and sin can infect anything and everything. The leaven of the Pharisees surely included their focus on formalism, on traditionalism, and their rejection of Jesus and their desire to discredit and destroy him. The leaven of Herod may have been his self-serving attitude, which led him to imprison John the Baptizer and end up executing him to keep his own foolish vows. Jesus was connected to the miracle of the feeding of the 4,000 and the unbelief of the Pharisees in their call for a sign from heaven when Jesus issued the warning about the leaven of Pharisees and Herod. I think we can all see just how this must have confused his disciples. They still ain't getting it. They weren't in Jesus' head. They didn't know the internal thoughts that he was having as he processed the miraculous feeding of the Pharisees and the unbelief and all this good stuff. It's just too much for them. They ain't getting it. For them, Jesus' warning about the leaven meant one thing. Daggone it, we forgot to bring bread. That's what they're thinking of. They're not looking in the deeper picture. They're not looking at the spiritual matters. They hear the word leaven, and immediately, like most of us, if I were to say the word cheeseburger now for the rest of the sermon, you're going to say, daggone it, we need to go to, we can't afford 5 guys. That's going to cost 5 of us to go there. Can we go to McDonald's? Have you got any points on your phone? We need to get a cheeseburger real bad. You're wanting a cheeseburger. Maybe there's one at the fellowship meal. You need to stay and find out and eat. Just saying. You hear this word and you're focused on that. So they heard the word leaven, and immediately they start thinking, doggone it, we forgot to bring bread. Man, what are we going to eat? They had failed to learn from their past experiences that Jesus can provide all they need. They've already witnessed the feeding of the 5,000. He corrects them at the feeding of the 4,000. Have y'all already forgotten what I just did? Let me do this again for you. They just saw the feeding of the 4,000. Now they're in the boat just a few hours later, and what are they thinking? Man, we ain't get enough bread. Where are we going to get enough bread? They should have known Jesus isn't worried about bread. If he wanted some bread, what could he do? I can't snap. Can y'all snap for me? Church, I can't snap. Can't do it. Snap his fingers, bread shows up. He could have done thousands and thousands overflowing with loaves of bread, and fish could have jumped in to eat the bread, and he could have eaten the fish right then too. Rather, Jesus is not concerned about the bread. He's concerned that his disciples haven't given up all of their evil practices, their false doctrines, their spiritual blindness, their hard-heartedness. So Jesus asked them a series of questions, most of which were rhetorical. Why are you discussing the fact that you have no bread? Why is he asking that question? They should know bread doesn't matter. I can give you all the bread you want. Don't you understand and comprehend? Do you have hardened hearts? Do you have eyes but not see? Do you have ears but not hear? And do you not remember? When I broke 5 loaves for 5,000, how many baskets were left over to collect? When I just broke 7 loaves for 4,000. By the way, that's 2 totally different situations. You see Jesus pointing out, hey, this has happened before. 2 different situations. When I broke 5, we had this many left over. When I broke 7 for the 4, we had this many left over. How many baskets have we collected total? Don't you understand? And sadly, they didn't. They still don't get it. The apostles seem to scarcely remember anything. And they're scarily close to becoming like these Pharisees, these religious leaders, these church people who should know the truth of God, but are too hung up in their blame traditions that they're missing the point. It's like they're teetering on the brink of spiritual blindness. But Jesus' solemn series of questions ended with a glimmer of hope. I love how he ends this. He says, don't you understand yet? That word yet is very important. It wasn't, don't you understand? I got corrected by my parents quite a few times, believe it or not. I know you're shocked. A good, perfect man like me, right, ladies? I'm just saying. Every now and then I get corrected. I never recall mom and dad saying, don't you get it yet? It was, don't you get it, smack? Don't you get it, something? It was some adjective added behind that. Not, don't you get it yet? This opens it up. You know what it opens up? This opens up that they might not understand right now, but one day they will. Don't you understand yet? We know they did end up getting it. They became strong leaders of the church. Whenever followers of Jesus have their eyes to see and hearts to believe, they're probably going to have to overcome some fears, some anxieties, some hardships, some struggles, some battles, and anything else that arises in your life. You might not get it yet, but keep trying. Jesus is the Son of God, and we must understand that he has done and what he can do. And we have just got to let him do it and know that we don't get it yet. But when we keep trying, we will. Because won't he do it, church? Jesus will show the difference between how there's a permanent blindness like the Pharisees and those who are temporary blind like his apostles. The Pharisees' unwillingness to receive the truth led them to a terminal condition with eternal consequences. But Jesus' apostles truly desire to grow. They want to learn. They want to change. They want to become better, even if they're slow at it. Mark includes one more story that goes along perfectly with the theme of reading the signs, and it's a 2-step healing of a blind man. Y'all check it out, the sign of seeing. Look at verses 22 through 26 with me, church. They came to Bethsaida. They brought a blind man to him and begged him to touch him. He took the blind man by the hand, brought him out of the village. Spitting on his eyes and laying his hands on him, he asked him, do you see anything? He looked up and said, I see people. They look like trees walking. Again, Jesus placed his hands on the man's eyes. The man looked intently, and his sight was restored, and he saw everything clearly. Then he sent him home, saying, don't even go into the village. This story of the blind man and the story of the deaf man from last chapter are the only 2 miracles that are unique to Mark's gospel. All right? The 2 miracles have some similarities. In both cases, unnamed people brought men to Jesus to be healed. They begged Jesus to heal their friend, their family member, their loved one with simply his touch. Both stories, Jesus takes the men into a spot of privacy. He touches the affected parts of their body that aren't working right, and he uses spit in both healings. After the healings, he tells both of them, don't tell anybody what's happened. But there's something unique about this miracle because it's the only 2-step miracle in the Gospels. The only story where Jesus is touching somebody twice, and I think I know why, church. What did he just tell the apostles who are struggling with their faith? You don't get it yet. You're still growing. So I think in my opinion, Jesus is doing this 2-step process to see that sometimes you have to take your time. You'll get it, but it's not there yet. Consider the situation of this blind man. He's living in a world of darkness. Either he or those around him led him to Jesus because they had heard about Jesus' healing powers. But when he was brought to Jesus, he couldn't see Jesus. He's standing there vulnerable. Jesus takes him by the hand, brings him out of the village, and let's ask the question that I guarantee you I'm not the only one who wants to ask. Why does he keep spitting in people? Right? Why is Jesus just spitting in this man's eyes? Jesus could have easily said, hey, look here. You see it? Boom. You're healed. Easily. In last week's, do you remember Jesus used spit to heal the deaf man? And I mentioned that people in the ancient world believed that there was healing power in saliva. Maybe that's why Jesus used spit to heal the blind man. Or perhaps maybe Jesus is using his spit to soften up some buildup on the man's eyes. You know, kind of like your wife or your mom will use spit if you got something on your cheek or something on you. You remember what I'm talking about? Yesterday, Holly Ann and I are coming back from Richmond, and it looked like she had a burn on the side of her hand. She's driving. She's got her hand right here beside me, and I was getting ready to hold it, but I didn't want to hurt her if she had a burn, right? I'm colorblind. I don't pay attention well. And I said, what'd you do to burn yourself? She said, oh, it's just Sharpie. Y'all know what I did? That spit on that thumb, and I just caressed her hand and got that Sharpie right off of it. Spit cleans. So maybe that's what it is. Maybe there was just so much gunk built up. Jesus said, man, I ain't got a bottle of water on me. You know what? And starts cleaning the crust off. Maybe that's what it was. But here's what I love. Jesus asked the man to open his eyes and tell him what he could see. Dude's vision is so blurry, he says people look like trees. For this man to say that people look like trees, what does that tell us about his blindness? He's been able to see before. For him to understand what the people look like trees means he understands what people should look like and what trees should look like. So he hasn't always been blind since birth. There must have been a time in his life when he did see. Finally, Jesus touches his eyes a second time, and it says that he can see clearly. So, again, the reason in my mind for this two-step miracle, Mark doesn't explain the reason for his unusual two-step miracle. Why does he do it twice? Can you see? Oh, you still can't? All right, here, try this now. There's a second step. Maybe now you can see, and he could. But there's no doubt that Jesus could have healed this man with one touch. We've seen him do it a ton of times. There's no doubt this could have been a one step, so there has to be a reason. On all the other occasions when Jesus healed a blind man, it didn't take two steps, so why this time? Again, I firmly believe it's because of the yet. You don't understand yet. You're going to still grow in your faith. You see, it's going to take time because you're going to start seeing it. It's still going to be a little blurry, but let me do my work. Let me spit and clean out your eyes real quick. Let me clear your heart because you're still growing. You're not there yet. You can see, but you can't see clearly yet. Church, I guarantee every single one of us ain't there yet. God is needing to spit on his thumb, spit on his hand, spit on our eyes, spit wherever he's needing. Maybe it's our ears, maybe it's your heart, maybe it's your mouth that Jesus is needing to spit on to clean it up a little bit. But he's saying, you're growing, you're almost there, it's almost clear, but it's not there yet. Personal opinion here. I truly believe this is an illustration of developing our faith and understanding of the apostles and for us. If that man's vision had been cleared right away, they would have just rolled on like they always had. But I guarantee you, something about this made him say, wait, why did it take two times? Why did he have to do it a second time? Why didn't it work the first time? Because you're not there yet. You see, they had witnessed the feeding of the 4,000. They had seen the unbelief of the Pharisees. Jesus had challenged them to understand and beware of the leaven of the Pharisees and of Herod. They didn't get it. They were forgetful. They were confused. But Jesus is still leading them to understand. They don't get it yet. They're still growing in their spiritual vision of getting it. Next week, we're going to see how Jesus is asking them who they believed he was. Peter's going to make the good confession, but that's next Sunday. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. I want to finish up by having us answer some personal questions. Y'all ready for this? I need you to answer these questions. How is your spiritual vision? Can you read the signs? Have you seen and understood who Jesus truly is? Are things still a little blurry? Are you still blind? Are you looking for sensational signs from heaven, or are you content with simply the evidence of what God has done in your heart? You're still working on it. You're just not there yet. You see, church, Jesus is the only one who can bring the healing and heal the spiritual blindness that we've got. But we have got to come to him, ask him for help, and ask him to bring his healing, powerful vision. We have got to ask Jesus to spit in our eyes, spit in our ears, spit on my mouth, spit on my heart, spit wherever is needed, and cleanse me. I pray we develop a deep faith and grow our spiritual vision. I pray we see God's miracles and power in everything around us. I pray we won't ignore, we won't forget what God has done or is doing, because we're just not there yet. Let's pray. God, help us. God, open the eyes of our heart. We want to see Jesus. In his name we pray this. Amen. Won't y'all come as we stand and prepare our hearts for communion together?